So let me start this video. This is the part 3 of our video, and then we'll comment afterwards.
The Assembly could not have approved the Nysc Act. That's another campaign that we're going to launch sooner than later. Let us finish with the urgent task. The Nysc decree of 1973. For those who have been proudly wearing their uniform of Nysc, you don't question anything. We had a problem that took us to war. War ended. Instead of going to solve the issues that are still unresolved to this date, these same issues we are raising today were the things that took us to war in 1967. How do we live together? Was that not the issue that they went to Aburi and agreed, and then they came back and go on and go abandoned it at the direction of the British and began to kill people? To lock everybody down to what we have seen now. Now, instead of going to solve that problem, you now set up a scheme in which you took young people who may not have been politically conscious when the trouble began, to say, let the young people mix up. The children of the north will come to the south and see their country. The children of the south will go to the north and see their country. And as they mix up, they will understand themselves better, and it will be El Dorado thereafter. Yeah. That's the front. That's the front screen. At the back end, the Nysc was a scheme by which the children of Sokoto, the children of Kano, the children of Meduguri were sent to go and serve in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, in Warri, where they will be retained after the service year in NNPC, in MPA, in Central Bank, and all such institutions. Whereas the children of Lagos, the children of Ibadan, the children of Warri, the children of Enugu, the children of Port Harcourt are sent to go and perish in Kaura Namoda, in Gashua, in Brinin, Kebi, wherever. And you get there, there's no prospect of any kind of job. You are taken to rural places to go to teach. 90% of the bureaucracy of how Nigeria is being managed, whether you went to NNPC or you went to Central Bank or you went to any of all these other places, the recruitment process was in that standing instruction of retain them when they come to serve in your place in Port Harcourt, and then they put it in that constitution. Nysc is in a part of the constitution that requires 4/5 majority. That is Land Use Act, Nysc Act. What was Land Use the decree? They called it Act when they imposed the constitution later. What was the Nysc? What was the Land Use decree? The land ownership system in the north was one in which the emir owned everything, and gave only those he chose. If he didn't give you, he didn't get. In the south, it was different. Lands belonged to individuals and on some occasion communities. And so, if you worked hard, you got the quantity. Your family could inherit so much. You could buy so much, but all are amongst right to private property. The north, this same caliphate, targeting the lands of the south and everybody else in the middle belt, decided to bring the land use decree in which government became the owner of all the lands. In that military era, the governors who were now to be holding, the governors were appointed, governor of your state could come from Kebi, the governor of Imo could come from Zamfara, and all of that. So these generals, these genocide generals you see that are still hanging around like demons today, they took the choicest lands all across the length and breadth of Nigeria under that land use decree, which they then smuggled into that constitution by the instrumentality of Obasanjo that introduced 17 amendments after the Constituent Assembly had submitted its clean copy. 17 amendments. One such amendment is to restore for the caliphate the states that the Constituent Assembly rejected as federating units instead of the regions. That was how we lost all our economic assets. For the liars and charlatans that are spreading the story of how Ironsi did the Ironsi decree number 34 did not touch the structure of the Federation of Nigeria. Anybody from the South and Middle Belt who has education and who is spreading that falsehood that was crafted in Britain and nurtured in Sokoto will labor under the curse, because Ironsi had been killed on the 29th of July in 1966. Almost 1 year to the time on the 27th of May in 1967, when Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon did the bidding of his masters in the attempt to stop the East from declaring Biafra in 3 days from that point. That was the first time the 4 regions structure of the Federation of Nigeria was tampered with. 27th of May, 1967. Ironsi only formed an administration, that's some kind of governance by the military, because the federal government had been decapitated. 2 of the regional governments have been, everything was in disarray, have been decapitated by those. The people that staged the coup did not get to power. Nzogbu and Co didn't get to power, they were stopped. Ironsi only happened to be the most senior military officer. He had to be the head, he was the head of the army. It fell on him to rally people back to some kind of so the governors were appointed for the 4 regions. That will tell you that the regions were still intact. Usman Katsina for the north, killed later for the west, Ojukwu in the east, Ejo in the midwest. These 4 military administrators, sitting with the head of the army, became the Supreme Military Council. Of course, they had the head of police and 2 other service chiefs joining them. That was what the Supreme Military Council was all about. That was the only governance. The parliament could not be functioning in the period where there's no government of civil rule. So they took over the functions of the parliament in that emergency to stabilize, to stop the killings and stabilize things. 6 months down the road, people who read their own meanings to say, oh, it was Igbo coup. Nigeria is dying today because Nigeria was trying to kill the Igbo on account of various falsehoods manufactured in England. You saw the German that was telling the story of what transpired. These things are falsehoods, and people with education from the South, because they think that once Igbo is killed, their life will be better. Look at what is happening all over the place. Just back 50 years. In all these places where people are being slaughtered, look back through the years and see why people are being slaughtered in the various places that are being slaughtered today. If not for the lunatic that came to restore Biafra in the air, in the east, the east wouldn't have been, wouldn't have been at the receiving end of Nigeria, but for the madmen that say they want to restore the Biafra that has no boundary. At a time where we are putting the monster that is holding them down to death, they sabotaged that effort, and they went about killing our own people because they want to make money from dying people. So, where we are now, just to tell you that the people we are dealing with know what they are doing, but our own people refuse to know. It was that thing that Harcourt, that betrothal that Harcourt was talking about. That was what Ahmadu Bello was celebrating in 1960. At the time, the British will now leave. Handing us over, we had been betrothed to them in 1914. The one that did the betrothal is going. Ahmadu Bello was now the one to receive the full control of all of us from them. And that was what he was celebrating when he told his lieutenants in the first week of independence in 1960 that the new nation called Nigeria should be an asset of their great-grandfather Osman Danfodio, and that they must ruthlessly prevent a change of power. They use the minorities of the North as willing tools and the South as a conquered territory. Never allow them to allow us to rule over them, and never allow us to have control over our own future. These are the things that, he was telling them. He was as a Premier of Northern Nigeria, Sir Ahmadu Bello, celebrating the grand bequest by the British Crown. That grand bequest is that 1913 explanation that we were now, as the South, we were now being handed over to the North as they were described as Southern Lady of Means. We told us about how long they had extracted this and sold this, this oil that we are still dying over today. They sold for 50 years plus before they declared Oloibiri in 1957. If you doubt me, go and research Shell Diary, the name by which Shell was operating, and see how they could have come in 1957, but were regulated, that is, by the Crown in 1936. Go to their website, go to Shell website and see what they were doing in 1936, by which time the Crown was now coming to take a portion of their profits by way of regulation. Before then, they were operating just a charter and paying only what comes as tax. They were headquartered in Owerri for 42 years before going to Port Harcourt in 1960. What were they doing in Owerri in that massive facility? And people with education don't bother to look. They just take whatever they are told and continue to spread the falsehood that is putting millions of people to death, because Nigeria is a pile of lies. Everything you were told is a lie.